Hi everybody, Thatgeek Reviews here. Today I wanted to take some time to talk about something that most people really care about, don't care about. Really depends. Star Wars. For those of you who don't know, Star Wars was created, or the first movie came out in 1977 by George. I'm not even going to explain it. If you don't know what Star Wars is and you're watching this video, there's no hope for you. You would need to get in the house and watch that. Star Wars is like, it started out as like a cult, and it's still considered, some people consider it like a cult movie series slash series. And it's like, is it actually a cult series? Is it not? So many people like it now that it's not a cult series, though it's still considered one. So take it for what you will. It's, again, I'll go over briefly. 1977, George Lucas, Star Wars, it was called. And then in 1983, years later, The Empire Strikes Back came out, and it was Star Wars A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and then in 1983, we had Return of the Jedi. Now, these are the original three, and then, of course, in 1999, we had The Phantom Menace. In 2002, we had Attack of the Clones, and in 2005, we had Revenge of the Sith. Now, the original three movies, I don't think anybody can say weren't good. If you can, and you refute that they were good, then please comment, message. I would love to have a conversation with you. But the prequels, people just, they don't like them. They flip out, and it's really one of those things that it depends on who you are. I mean, like me, rather than buying the entire thing set on Blu-ray, I bought the original, which, I mean, the Blu-ray release in and out itself isn't even the originals. Really, it's just such like a topic of controversies. Is George Lucas a good writer, director, etc., or is his idea good? And I'm going to take a look into it. So George Lucas designed this entire universe, and the Star Wars universe, for those of you who know, is incredibly big. There's so much. I mean, I have an entire, it's a Star Wars encyclopedia. And that goes into the Old Republic, the New Republic, during the movies. It goes into everything, and there's so much more that you can do. So really, it's incredible. It's taken on a complete, it's like a universe. People live it like they live our lives. They obsess. It's really, it's fantastic, really. And it's curious though, because now the people who usually do that, they don't like the prequels, and they argue that they're the worst movies ever made and complete piles of crap. But let's look into it. So now, The Phantom Menace was in 1999. It had some of the biggest hype for any movie. It's one of the biggest hypes since anything. This movie was 22 years since the first one came out, and the last one was in 83, so now it's been 16 years. And then now it's announced that this movie's coming out, and everybody's like, oh, wow. I mean, right now, for example, let's say, actually, there's no good example because it's ruined. Like, Indiana Jones wasn't one. They released one. The hype for that was incredible, and then it came out, and it was the biggest disappointment ever. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the Temple of Doom, but, I mean, it was just, the hype was phenomenal, and I remember as a kid, I was only 4 years old when it came out, everybody was flipping out about it, and it was a big deal. And, you know, they had special soda cans where they had collectible, like, one soda can could have the bottom half of one of the Jedi, like Obi-Wan, and the top half could have, like, you know, different, it was a Japanese, it was big. And it came out, and people left the theater practically in tears. It wasn't anything like they envisioned, but what did they envision? And now I'm going to fight the majority. I like to have opinions, and I do have many opinions that nobody agrees with. I disagree with most people on things, but I like to explain my point. The Phantom Menace takes us to the beginning of Anakin Skywalker's life. We see him as a young boy, and I think that's great. The prequels, for me, sum up what happens before the original movies. The original movies have a better story, better, like, characters, better everything. But if you just watch the originals, you have no idea what happened in the past. The prequels establish that. And because they're prequels and they're setting up a story, they're not going to be as good. I mean, it's like The Hobbit came out and everybody's like, eh. I mean, it's okay, but I mean, look at Lord of the Rings. And it's a prequel. It's not going to be as good as the original. It's setting up the story, and it does its job perfectly for what it's there for. Now, the first Phantom Menace, I enjoy. I can't pick it apart that much. Does it focus on some things we don't care about, like the politics? Yes. I'm not watching Star Wars for the politics. I'm watching it for the character development. I'm watching it for the plot. I'm watching it for, you know, somewhat the action. The Phantom Menace is one of my favorite soundtracks of them all. John Williams comes back and composes a brilliant soundtrack. Duel of the Fates, the ending song when Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Darth Maul are having their battle at the end is one of the best songs to come out of a Star Wars movie, if not the best. It's better than, you know, the Throne Room. It's better than the Battle of Endor. It's better than everything. It's incredible. And the Battle of Yavin was a great song, but it really does not compare to John Williams' score in this movie. So, boom, the score is great. And I know they're ending the 3D releases, but I went to the theater when this was in 3D to see, because I never had the chance to see Star Wars on the big screen. The first one, at least. I saw the second and third one, prequels. But, I mean, in the originals, I was looking forward to them being in 3D so I could see them on the big screen. Just because that's always been a dream of mine. I want the theatrical releases. If I had my way, theatrical releases, re-release, so I could watch them. Because that is every geek's dream, and I want it, and now. But the prequels are not terrible. I am saying that the first one especially is what I'm focusing on right now. It doesn't do much to distract. There are droids. And now we're going to read into this. The technology in the prequels, at first glance, is more advanced than it is in the originals. Now, I mean, there are no clones until the second movie. We're at droids. I'm arguing this. There are clones, which are the stormtroopers, we come to find out in Revenge of the Sith. Does it make sense that they could have droids before they have clones? There are robots before they can clone people. Yes, completely. I think that makes sense. Yes, I understand that if you watch the originals, you think it's just different people volunteer, you know, like an army almost. But then when you watch the prequels, it establishes, and it almost covers for itself, because they're clones. It's a lot more to clone somebody than it is to robots, mass-produced robots. And I mean, we get to see a robot factory, and I understand that there are no robots really in the originals. They're more aliens, and I respect the originals more because there was animatronics. It wasn't all crappy CGI, because George Lucas has a horrible history with CGI, and then when he goes back and remakes the originals, his CGI like ruins it. I get that. I completely understand, but I think that we really need to give it some credit where credit is due. We just want to complain about it, and believe me, I am not saying that the prequels compared to the originals any way, shape, or form. Originals over the prequels any day. Again, I spent 45 when I could have spent 70 on the incomplete saga, because I don't want to own the prequels again. I already own them on DVD. So it's like, I mean, they're okay, and the first one, it's not that bad. I mean, let's pick it apart. Let's go over the bads. We have Jar Jar. Like, do I need to? Like, y'all know how Jar Jar is. That's the big one. Everybody, oh, we can't watch it because of Jar Jar. You can get through it. Like, he isn't that bad. Like, once you can get through the first movie, he's barely in the second and third, and that's fine. And he's not terrible. And the thing with the prequels, and that everybody needs to know, is they were designed to get a younger generation into Star Wars. I went as Anakin Skywalker for Halloween when I was 7, and I got into it when I was 6 because of Attack of the Clones. It did its job. I love it now. It completely did its job. And for that, good job. I mean, it wasn't made, and that's the issue that most people don't realize. It wasn't made for the people who were obsessed with it already. It was made for the people who have never watched it to get a new generation into it, which it did for me. I got into it when a couple years later, I watched the originals when I was like 8 or 9, and I was like, oh, the originals. And it did its job pretty good. I mean, Jar Jar attracted kids. I remember, and I'm going to be the first one to admit, and I don't want no angry comments, when I was 7, Jar Jar was my favorite character because he was kid-like. It was like a cartoon. And I got that. And now I'm like, I can't stand to hear his voice and I want to kill him because I actually have, some brains in me. But, like, he's not that bad. I definitely feel like there could have been some work in. We could have not had him. But, I mean, the first movie, Liam Neeson, that's the reason to watch it right there. Everybody likes Taken. Everybody likes watching Liam Neeson kick ass. So, Liam Neeson's right there. He's great. Ewan McGregor is incredible as Obi-Wan, in my opinion. Most people will agree with me. Natalie Portman was fine. I mean, it wasn't bad. And now that movie ended with Obi-Wan taking Anakin as his apprentice and Qui-Gon Jinn dying. And now Obi-Wan is now a Jedi Knight. He's no longer a Padawan. And now he's taking on Anakin as his Padawan. So that leads us to 2002, Attack of the Clones. And this is the one where I haven't seen it in so long, and then, I kind of rewatched it recently-ish, and I was like, it's not that bad. Like, everybody rips it apart. They were just movies that were there. The second one really, ultimately, never held any big plot device. Like, it wasn't like, this movie was made for this reason. It was just there. Like, it was done, and it happened. Like, it was its own story, and did it fit in and make other things? It really did and didn't. Like, you have, that establishes the clones that I mentioned previously, and, yeah, that's the big one. I mean, you have the clones, you have the clone troopers, you have the Clone Wars, which leads into the cartoon that we don't talk about and that never exists, and it's terrible, but again, new generation, whatever, gets kids into it, and it does its job. You get it? It leads us into the next movie, fine. The third movie, we'll talk about in a moment. That one, you're going to be shocked. Now, the second movie, of course, we see, I get very emotional at this part. We see Hayden Christensen. For those of you who know Star Wars, and you know Hayden Christensen, he's not very good. The second one is now where I'm going to actually go and talk about how people feel about the prequels. The first movie wasn't that bad. It got us into it. It starts the whole prequel trilogy. If you were waiting 20 years for it, it was a disappointment because it's not. It was meant to lead us into two better movies. And that's what it did, and it did it well. But now, the second one is where we can start critically reviewing in the sense that it just sucked acting-wise. George Lucas, when he wrote the original three, the first one, yeah, he did everything. That's fine. He had a good hit. Good for him. The second and third, he did not direct, and he didn't screenwrite. Now, that's good, because if it's his idea and his plot, he can't screenwrite. We get famous lines from Hayden Christensen, brilliantly acted, too, by the way, like, the sand is coarse, and from my point of view, the Jedi are the ones that are evil. It's like, these are not good lines. He does not know how to screenwrite. It was terrible. It was awkward. And Hayden Christensen's acting was like that Asian guy who sang She Bang on American Idol. Like, it was comical. Like, I'm laughing. I'm going back, I'm watching it, and I'm laughing. Like, there are scenes, like the dramatic scene on Naboo when, like, Anakin Skywalker and Amidala are, like, falling for each other, and I lose it. Like, I just crack up, and it's like, this is not supposed to be a funny moment. This is supposed to be a moment of love and happiness that is now because of Hayden Christensen sucking. And George Lucas, he needs to learn how to just enjoy his billions of dollars in retirement and let other people do his work. And that is why I will post another video on the 2017 Star Wars film. I'll be getting to that next week. Really, like, it's terrible. Like, I mean, the movie in and out itself was not a bad movie. It had a good plot. It had a good premise. I enjoyed it. It had some funny jokes. Again, Ewan McGregor's little one-liners. He is phenomenal. The second movie, he's great. The third movie, he's incredible. I never get bored of watching Ewan McGregor do his work. I think he's amazing. That's just me. Most people agree with me. I haven't met somebody that didn't like him. I feel like he kind of actually looks like Alec Guinness if he was younger, and I think he's great. And I think that he saves the prequels. He makes them worth watching. You can watch them because of him. In my opinion, that's me. I can watch them because I enjoy watching his acting. Ewan McGregor's a great actor. He hasn't sucked in anything. He's been in sucky movies, but he hasn't sucked in them for the most part. And Hayden Christensen is the opposite. Natalie Portman, and I hate to say this, I love her. She's adorable. She's been in great movies. She was great in Black Swan. Her acting was amazing. But she was younger in these days. And because she was younger, she was inexperienced, and she really her acting wasn't that good. It was a little too dramatic. It was uncomfortably dramatic. It just didn't work. And I feel bad saying that because I like her. It's not like I don't like her. It's just the fact that she's just not, like, good in the movies. And, I mean, she's not terrible, like, you're not like, bah! But, I mean, she's just not amazing. And the second movie, she was okay. I mean, yeah, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was difficult to watch acting-wise, and the plot wasn't bad. I mean, Ewan McGregor had a larger role in it, you know, because he's trying to set out to find Anakin. It's, again, the entire movie is kind of like useless. The last 20 minutes, boom, Clone Wars began. That's the important part. Like, that is now where it's important because now there are clones. Those clones are going to bring us into the third movie. And we'll talk about that in a second. And, I mean, Jango Fett dies, Boba Fett, then in turn, that's how you get that. So that kind of explains Boba Fett. I like that little, spiel in there. I mean, Christopher Lee's always a treasure. I mean, we see Count Dooku. I mean, Christopher Lee's a great actor. I mean, he's like 95, but I mean, he's incredible. Great British actor. He's done a lot. I mean, we have his old Hammer Dracula movies, and Hammer in general. He's done more than Dracula. We could talk, it could talk about that for a while. I could make a whole video on that. And he was great. And he did good. He did acting good. We see Yoda in the second movie with his lightsabering and everywhere, and nobody expected that who was a fan. They were like, wow, like my mother was like, wow, that was badass. Like she was excited because she grew up with the original Star Wars. She would see the third one. She was born in like 73, so I mean she was still just young when it came out, but she saw one of them in the theater as a kid. So it's really like one of those kind of throwback, but I mean, I give the first movie a 6.5 out of 10. I give the second movie a 6 out of 10. They were watchable, but it's also, to me, like Star Trek. I love the original. I'm a big fan of The Next Generation. I don't hate it. I've just not warmed up to it. You can't compare the two because there's no comparison. They're both completely different in their own retrospect. If I had to pick one, original, no problem. But you can't, like, sit here and analyze it because they're the same timeline, they're the same world, the same universe, the same everything. They all know, they knew, but it's in the future, and you can't compare the two because they're completely different in their own way, and they're great for their own way, and they're terrible in their own ways. And the prequels and the originals are like that too. You cannot compare the two because no doubt the originals are better, but the prequels are good in their own retrospect. The effects are better if you enjoy CGI. But the thing is, they were made to be a blockbuster. The original Star Wars came out. There was no Star Wars before that. So it came out, and then it was a big hit. There was more. Now they knew if this movie came out, it was made to be blockbuster material, So it's going to be cheap. It's going to have cheaper effects, which leads us on to the third movie. The third movie is my favorite out of the trilogies. It's up there with the originals in my mind. The movie itself is impeccable. I think it's great. The plot's great. The acting isn't terrible besides Hayden Christensen. And it's amazing. And the effects, though? The effects are horrible. The dialogue is horrible. And I'd like to mention one scene. There's one scene in which we can see the Chancellor admitting that he's the Emperor, taking over Anakin as Mace Windu dies. Now, if you had not ever watched this movie, like my mother did not know what it was. It was on, she walked in and thought she was on Sci-Fi with one of the cheesy, cheapy horror hour movies. And she was dying, and I was like, this is Star Wars. And she was like, what? We get, the Chancellor, it was the same actor as the originals who played the Emperor, and it was really nice and cool to see that, because one, we thought he'd be dead by now, but he was actually not that old in the late 70s and early 80s when he did the Emperor. So it was cool. Like, we got that. I was like, yeah. And we got the same actor, and it's great. And then, of course, anybody who watched the originals knew that the Chancellor Palpatine was the Emperor the entire time. But for those of you who didn't, by the time the third one came out, it was like, wow. But it was obvious. I mean, you could have deduced that. I did, and I didn't even see the originals. So it was a big deal, and I think that it was something to talk about, and it was good. I mean, besides that one scene. Now we get, again, funny one-liners from Ewan McGregor. We get Count Dooku's downfall, and we're introduced to General Grievous, who is from the Clone Wars. There was an old cartoon, not old, but I mean, it was after the prequels. But I think it was between the second and third movie. It was actually by the makers of Samurai Jack, and it kind of explained that. And then, obviously, we have the new Clone Wars cartoon, which we don't talk about. It doesn't exist. And it's not bad. I mean, the movie is good. I love it. I think it bridges how Anakin turns dark, how Obi-Wan goes into isolation, how the Empire takes over. The Empire is born, and the Jedi are thrusted out and killed. And it really does a great job at showing it. The effects get cheesy. I think there's actually a couple scenes where R2 was CGI'd, I noticed. And that was, like when they were on the ship trying to get Grievous at the very beginning, I noticed R2-D2 was CGI'd, and some of the super battle droids were CGI'd, and it's like, well, I mean, the droids were always CGI'd, but it's like, why? Like, we could have easily gotten, like, the main ones, if you're only using a couple, to be real, and put some extra money into it and made it look cool, like the originals, but no, we get cheap Lucas CGI, and it's not even good CGI, it's, like, obvious CGI. It looks like the textures aren't there, and it's layered incorrectly, and, I mean, I can't do it better, I don't know, but, I mean, they should have, that's their job, that, you had one job, and you failed, and I don't understand, like, I honestly have to say one of my favorite scenes in the entire, better than some of the moments in the originals, one of my favorite scenes in the series, top 3 favorite scenes, is the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar. The music was great. Again, good job, John Williams. The scene was great. The effects were great. It was dramatic until Anakin lays down his, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil, and then it kind of kills the moment. And Natalie Portman's overacting again. Sorry, I love her, and I know, like, she's not bad, but like, she's just, like, don't be whiny. Like, I don't want whiny Natalie. I want sexy Natalie, and I want her Black Swan Natalie. Like, go finger yourself on your bed again. Like, no, I'm kidding, but like, it just, and Natalie Portman, like, why? Please, like, Mila Kunis could have done it better, and Natalie, she's just whiny, and that's her role, and I understand that, but, like, I don't want that to be her role. Like, she could have not been whiny in the first 2 movies, and then been fine in the third one, but no, she didn't. So, sorry, Natalie's getting a pass in this one, and, she's getting the diss, not the kiss. Again, I watched the movie over and over again for Ewan McGregor, and I love him, and I think he's great. And Hayden Christensen, Yoda was okay. I mean, he was kind of a dick in this movie. Kind of an asshole to Anakin. Anakin felt kind of bad, because, like, he was put on the council, but not a knight, a master, and he was just kind of, like, beaten up by the Jedi the entire thing. And then he's like, no wonder he goes to the dark side. So thanks, Jedis, for being assholes. You deserved it. Like, you come to the dark side, we have cookies, I guess. I don't know. And, I mean, once it gets dark, like, I can't take Hayden Christensen seriously when he's, like, being all emo and dark, and then he has red eyes, and it's like, wow, really? Red eyes? Like, is that the best you could do? Oh, red eyes! Oh, no! Like, and whining. No, not red eyes, and whining. Like, I'm gonna kill you! Ah! Like, oh no, like, we're getting the 8th grade emo kids coming after us. Shit. Like, I mean, and then the 8th grade emo kid kills younglings, and that's another great Lucas quote for the day. They're killing younglings. Like, I don't know how, I feel so bad for Ewan McGregor for having to say that line. It's Anakin, he was killing younglings. Like, try to say that like 5 times without laughing. Like, it's just not going to happen. So Lucas, again, no screenwriting for Lucas. He loses his screenwriting certificate, which is great because he's creative consultant for the new movies, which means goodbye, kiss my ass, Lucas. So basically what I'm saying is the prequels aren't as bad. And in summary, the prequels aren't as bad as people make them out to be. They're not terrible, terrible movies. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if I'm not clear and you want me to go into it more, I will take each movie, make a different video for each movie, but this is just like an overview as to how they're not that bad. They're not great by any standards. I mean, the third movie, I told you my ratings of the first two. I said 6.5 on the first, 6 on the second. I give the third one, I mean, the plot is so strong, and the story is just so driven. I give it a 7.5 out of 10 on that. And I mean, it doesn't get a 2 thumbs up. It gets a shaky thumb, like shaky towards the up, but I mean, not down in any way. I mean, it's not bad. I think that you give them a chance. I mean, the originals are great, and if I have to have a movie night, am I going to watch the prequels of the originals? If I'm drunk and I'm really feeling like laughing, I mean, maybe the prequels, but I mean, overall, I mean, you're really going to pick the originals, wouldn't you? And the originals will always just maintain that nostalgic standard, which people are looking for. I mean, the artwork was better, the stories were better, the plots were better, the characters were more driven, and more development, more character, basically, and they were more connectable. Everybody had a character to connect to. We don't have the Wookiees until the third prequel movie, which were a big one. A lot of people liked. So we really are missing like a little bit out of, that we're not really introduced to many different aliens in the first movie. Like we are, but aren't. Like we have Watto, we have Jar Jar, and it's like in the first original, we go into the cantina and it's like everything. And it's incredible. And then they're all real too. It's like animatronic puppet. It's great, And you have Frank Oz, who's still voicing Yoda, which is nice. But I would have loved Frank Oz. Like, he doesn't do much anymore, but it's like Frank Oz. He's one of those famous puppeteers. You have the Muppets, Frank Oz and Jim Henson, and Sesame Street. And it's like, we really could have done some stuff with him. You could have paid him a few extra bucks and had him do his puppets. You could have done anything. And I hate to say it, but coming from the Star Wars geek, I would have rather seen cheap-looking puppets that are real than to see cheaper CGI that looks fake. And I know you can do more with it, but it reflects that you settled for CGI. It doesn't look nearly as good, and I really, really think that with the new Star Wars movies, I really hope that they know what they're doing. It's not LucasArts. LucasArts is bought by Disney. The people writing, we have the original writer from The Empire Strikes Back as far as the writer of Toy Story 3. I'm really curious in seeing how they do it. I'm curious in seeing the cinematography. I'm curious in the effects. I know John Williams is coming back to do the soundtrack, which is incredible. I'd love to see what he can write because his recent music has been shit. Steven Spielberg's movies have been shit. Everything with Spielberg and Lucas lately has not been good. And I mean, Lucas just sold out his company, basically. So he's done. I mean, he's finally realized it's time for him to sit with his billions. And it's good. And I'm curious to see the direction we're going. We have the new Battlefront game that was released, or announced anyway. Not many details on it other than it's by DICE. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the new Star Wars universe. We have so much story. We have so many book series that are official parts of the timeline we can do. We have we can't because the actors of the original are old, but I mean, you can get away with it. I'm so curious if we're doing the Thrawn trilogy, the Yuuzhan Vong. What are we doing? What are we focusing on? I think that we all need to rewatch all of them, start at the first prequel, make our way through chronologically time-wise, and realize that they do a great job at doing the story and making you feel for the characters, and it makes the originals that much better. The prequels were not made to be box office successes. They may have wanted them to be, but to me, the prequels were there to make you more excited for the originals, and they do a great job at doing that, and that is why I don't think the prequels are those bad of movies. So this is That Geek Reviews, signing out.